All right, today we are diving deep into the massive, high stakes chess match for control of the Middle East. It's this incredible story of ancient empires, brand new kingdoms, and a really dangerous race for the ultimate weapon.
And it all kicks off with this fascinating question. How is it that the very nations that control the world's energy, the absolute lifeblood of the global economy, are somehow missing from the world's most exclusive club?
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. Look at that. On the left, you've got the giants of oil production, right? A lot of them in the Middle East. Then, on the right, you've got the declared nuclear powers. See the gap? Not a single one of those big oil players is on the nuclear list. So why is that? And more importantly, what happens when one of those nations decides it's time to change the rules of the game?
Well, that nation is Iran. You really can't understand the tensions in the region today without first getting a handle on Iran's incredibly high-stakes push to completely upend the strategic balance. Now, the big idea driving this whole thing is something called nuclear deterrence. It's this simple and frankly terrifying concept that if you have nuclear weapons, nobody else with nuclear weapons is going to attack you. It's basically the reason we've never seen two nuclear powers fight a full-scale war. For a country like Iran, this isn't just some abstract theory, it's about survival. And this is the crucial point. From Tehran's perspective, this isn't really about starting a war, it's about preventing one. Think about it. As long as their rival Israel is the only nuclear power around, and the US can project its military power wherever it wants, Iran feels incredibly vulnerable. A nuclear weapon would just fundamentally change that whole equation. Okay, so how do you actually build a bomb? Well, it all comes down to this process called uranium enrichment. You basically start with natural uranium, which is mostly this stable stuff, U-238. But the goal, the real prize, is to separate out and concentrate a much rarer, much more volatile type called U-235. And you do this using thousands of these super fast spinning machines called centrifuges. It is an incredibly difficult and wildly expensive thing to do. In this chart right here, this shows you where Iran is today. They have already enriched uranium up to 60% purity. The magic number for a weapon is 90%. Now here's the kicker. Getting from 60 to 90 is way easier than all the work it took to get to 60 in the first place. The hardest part is already done. They are dangerously close to the finish line, and that reality is what keeps leaders in Washington and Jerusalem up at night. But listen, Iran's nuclear ambition isn't just happening on its own. It's a huge move in a much bigger regional fight, a battle between two titans for the exact same prize, leadership of the entire Islamic world. And what's so interesting about this rivalry is how different their histories are. I mean, Iran sees itself as the heir to the ancient Persian Empire, a civilization with thousands of years of culture and history behind it. And then you have Saudi Arabia, a modern kingdom founded only in 1932 that became a dominant world power in less than a century. So let's do a little tale of the tape here. Saudi Arabia is bigger in terms of land, but Iran has more than double the population. That's a huge difference. Now, Iran's claim to leadership, it comes from its ancient past and its modern identity as this force of resistance against the West. Saudi Arabia's claim is all about religion. They are the custodian of Islam's two holiest sites, Mecca and Medina, so they position themselves as the spiritual and geographic heart of the faith. And it all boils down to two competing narratives. Iran's story is, we are the authentic Islamic power, we're independent, we're defiant. They love to paint Saudi Arabia as a puppet state, sitting in the lap of the US. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's narrative is, we are the stable, legitimate center of the Islamic world. This clash of ideas is what fuels conflict all over the region. But here's the thing about this rivalry. It almost never explodes into a direct head-to-head fight. Instead, it's a Cold War, fought indirectly through other countries and other groups. This is the shadow war for the Middle East. And once you see it, you start seeing the fingerprints of this conflict absolutely everywhere. You can pick almost any major crisis in the region, and I guarantee you'll find these two powers backing opposite sides. In Yemen, Iran arms the Houthi rebels, who are fighting a Saudi-led coalition. In Lebanon, Iran's main ally is Hezbollah, while Saudi Arabia backs the official government. It's the same pattern again and again. So how does Iran fight this shadow war? Well, its number one weapon is its network of proxies. These are armed groups that aren't officially part of a country's army. They're armed, they're trained, and they're funded by Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they allow Iran to project power and fight its enemies without risking a direct war. And this network, which Iran proudly calls the axis of resistance, is massive. It includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is one of the most powerful non-state armies in the entire world. You've got the Houthis in Yemen, who control the capital city. You have various militias all over Iraq and Syria, and even Hamas in Palestine.
Now, you might be looking at that last one, at Hamas, and thinking, wait a minute, Iran is a Shia-led country. Hamas is a Sunni group. Aren't they supposed to be ideological enemies? So why on earth would Iran back them? And that question, that gets us to the very heart of Iran's grand strategy.
And here's the answer. At some point, Iran realized that the Shia-Sunni split was a major weakness. If they wanted to lead the entire Muslim world, not just part of it, they couldn't just be a Shia power. They had to get bigger than that. So by supporting a Sunni group like Hamas, because they share a common enemy in Israel, Iran sends this powerful message that its resistance isn't just for Shias, it's for all Muslims. It's a brilliant move strategically.
So when you put all the pieces together, the nuclear program, the proxy network, this big ideological battle, you start to see that it's all part of one single coherent strategy. It's basically a two-pronged attack. Fight your enemies indirectly through these proxies while you work on building the ultimate insurance policy, a nuke, back at home. It's a calculated long-term investment.
Now, let's be clear, this strategy has come at a huge cost. Crippling international sanctions have absolutely wrecked Iran's economy. But if you're sitting in Tehran, you see funding these proxies as a pretty cheap way to bog down your rivals, who are way wealthier and more powerful. You create a permanent security headache for them. And here's what's so fascinating. Iran knows it doesn't even need this strategy to be 100% successful. The thinking is that if their proxies can just achieve, say, 70 to 80% of their goals, gain a bit more political power, solidify their military control, that will be enough to fundamentally rewrite the map of the Middle East. So, the bottom line is this. The proxy strategy is a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. It allows a country that's weaker and economically isolated to challenge the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia all at the same time, all while being able to plausibly deny direct involvement and avoid a catastrophic war. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. What happens if this long game actually pays off for Iran? What happens if its proxy network becomes deeply embedded in governments across the region, right at the same moment that Iran crosses the nuclear threshold? What would that new Middle East even look like? And who would be left to challenge the new king?